This time on KEI Fabrication. Alright folks, so let me explain. Alright, we're about to take our life in our hands. Hurry up, we're gonna go right now. Getting ready to go on another little reconnaissance mission. Nice. Hey folks, my name is Mike. This is KEI Fabrication and welcome to my shop. And this is my most recent project, and this is my shop truck, my daily driver, my race truck, my garbage truck, and my all-around performance vehicle. If you want to follow along with the channel, you can see the progress of the build on this truck and all the modifications that have been made. So this truck has already been to car shows, it's been road racing, it's been drag racing, and it's been circle track racing. We've got a bunch more new projects in the queue. We're looking forward to meeting more of you, and for those of you who've been with the channel for a while, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate your comments and the interaction and encouragement. Hopefully through this project we've gained some credibility with you folks, and let's see what's coming up next. Okay folks, I know it doesn't look like I've done much, but I actually cut the body completely away from the chassis, and I actually lowered the front 2.5 inches and I lowered the rear 2 inches, and I offset the body 2 inches to the right. Excuse me, my right now, but 2 inches to the left, sitting in the driver's side. So the other thing I did was, in order to fixture the body correctly, I put some semi-permanent frame mounting tabs with bolts in the cowl. Same thing back here on the quarter panel. The intention is to rigidly hold the body in place, but also allow the body to be taken off and removed when necessary. I did that all the way around. I don't know if I can show you the bracketry here. So I've got the left side over there. And I got the identical thing on the right side, but it is I've got the identical thing on the right side. It's just 2 inches shorter on the right than it is on the left. So again, it's a left-hand turn circle track car, so we want to make sure that it does that well. And there is a vintage racing organization. Actually, there's two in the Northeast, and the rules allow offset, even though this engine wasn't offset in the original package. However, if it was campaigned any later than 1970, these are updates that would have been made. So I'm basically making it like a 71 vintage, right when the Pintos came out and kind of was a mass exodus of the coupe bodies. First of all, they're getting super hard to find. The Pintos were lower, more aerodynamic, and the Vega came out and the Gremlin, and it really revolutionized the look of the modified. So this would be one step closer to what the last coupes ran. Once those home-built chassis and all-tube chassis came out and they went to independent front suspension, they really got carried away with chopping and channeling the bodies and sitting right on the ground. And I'm not going there with this car, so this is as far as I'll go. It's consistent with the spirit of the project, and to be quite honest with you, I think it looks way cooler, a little lower than it did. So there you have it. Alright, so what am I doing? I've got the body completely positioned. I've got some things going on in the windshield to get the body perfectly aligned with the rear. I've got strings running down the middle and everything's measured. The body is centered about itself, even though it's offset in the chassis. However, the body is repositioned so it's holding it into its true shape. The very next thing I'm going to do is attempt to create a firewall. So the reason why I wanted to really nail down this body and rigidly mount it to the chassis is I'm going to cut that firewall away, and the flimsy body is going to become even more flimsy. So I'm really just trying to take some precautions to hold it in the shape and really make it more consistent and easier to work with. I've got the sheet metal there. I've got a table set up here to start working on it, and I've moved my sheet metal shear, brake and slip roll, and my bead roller over here to get ready to do that. So I ran out of time today. I'm hoping that in the next couple of days I'll get an opportunity to chop that firewall out, and I'm really looking forward to using the bead roller and some of my sheet metal tools to put a firewall back in this thing. So the intention is to three-piece it, and the reason is I'm going to make a tiny little recessed section, kind of like the 39 Chevy had from the factory, in the middle. That'll also provide just a tiny bit more clearance for the distributor. Not that I need it, but it's going to look cool, and also make a right side and a left side with some steps in it to stiffen it up. So that's the plan. By three-piecing it, it should be something that I can bead roll the steps in, and it'll fit in the throat of the bead roller, and the smaller pieces will just be easier to work with, smaller templates. So that's the plan. I think it'll look cool. One of the reasons is the right side. Here we go again. The right side as I'm looking at it, but the left side in the driver's seat. I want to make that panel somewhat serviceable because the steering column is going to be going through there, the master cylinder, and a few other things. So I want to make that kind of a removable section over there. So that'll help out. And then just a matching configuration on this side. So, all right. Let's see what happens on the next update. Alright folks, so what I'm doing here is I'm just testing my equipment and my abilities to rough in a firewall. So I've been messing around with my cardboard aided design. I've got a bell housing here, and I've got a template that's eventually going to be the center portion of the firewall, and I am going to three-piece the firewall. However, before I cut a big chunk out of my brand new sheet metal, I wanted to make sure I understood what is going to happen to the sheet metal as a result of the bead roller and the tipping die to put the flange on. So let me take this apart and I'll show you what I'm up to. Before I do that, my intention, because this lip is so rough in terms of, you know, it's been in accidents and cut and modified, I'm going to try and put a something around the 3/4 inch deep flange that I can go in here and eventually stitch in a nice bead, and then take a sander and radius it off. And it'll also provide a nice lip here for some rigidity. The other thing I wanted to do is when I build my trans tunnel, I don't know if you can see that or not, when I build my trans tunnel, I wanted that lip to put a cone shape that's going to taper back to the rear of the transmission. And again, I've never built one of these flanges. I've never owned a tipping die until a couple of weeks ago, and I bought one. And I'm just kind of running this as a test pattern to see what the tipping die does. And then I understand that when you bend metal with the tipping die, it does some pretty crazy things to the sheet in terms of warping. So I wanted to see if I can control that. And I'm actually pretty encouraged. That's going to give me the confidence to move forward. So let me take this apart and I'll show you what I've been up to. Alright, so I just cut myself out a piece of sheet metal as a test piece out of that full sheet, and I've been using the tipping die here that I purchased from Eastwood, and this is the polyurethane die, this is the tipping die, and so what I did was I ran the tipping die probably 3 or 4 steps to get this flange tipped to where it needed to be, and it really deformed this. This is actually pretty straight right now because I have put it on the stretcher and used the stretcher around the flange to actually get the sheet to lay pretty flat. It was curved really bad. So there's still a ton of work to do to straighten this out to be perfect, but I wanted to prove out the concept. A little more stretching needs to go on this side, and some of it I overstretched and I'll have to go back to the shrinker. So that's the piece that's going to go over the trans tunnel, and I'm happy that I utilized this as a test piece because it allowed me to see what goes on when it gets close to the bell housing, and I'm actually going to increase this radius so it comes out about another inch on both sides. So instead of being almost a perfect horseshoe, it'll taper out and come this way a little bit and gain me some more clearance between the bell housing. So that was that piece. The other piece, again, what I'm hoping to do is make one piece. I just made it in 2 separate pieces just so I could understand what the effect of using the tipping die is going to have on this. And the tipping die did a really good job putting a 90-degree bend in this thing. This is going to fall, but It's all in the name of experimentation, right? So you can see that I've got a nice 90-degree flange, and I used the shrinker up here up top because the cowl comes to a point here and then tapers back this way towards the side of the vehicle. So I've actually got that happening here. So this is my first time using the tipping die, first time using the shrinker and stretcher in this situation. So the next thing I need to do is I need to take that flat panel that I made for the bell housing clearance, and I'm going to use the step die to put a pattern in here to get the right offset, and just I want a nice fancy pattern on here for one, and the next thing is I need to put that step in there to stiffen this up to get rid of that oil canning that's going to happen. So far I'm pretty encouraged. I've probably been at these test pieces and the pattern making for about 2 hours, and that included taking my stand for my chop saw and modifying it for the stretcher. I never did build a shrinker and stretcher stand. I can definitely see the value of having the foot pedal, so you can do the nice control with the both hands, and then do the shrinking and stretching with the foot pedal. So that's something that's going to happen in the future, to take my equipment as far along as I have this one. So I don't do this too often. Usually I get something and I put it in service, and if it works, it just keeps going. This is one of the first times that I've actually taken a new piece of equipment and did all the upgrades and updates and spent the money on the tooling to make it right. So I'm very, very happy with the performance of the dies and the bender itself, or the bead roller. And I tell you, I'm actually very impressed with the shrinker and stretcher. This is 20 gauge sheet metal, and it really moves this material fairly quickly. So alright, that's it for tonight. I'm going to adjust my pattern to clear the bell housing a little better, and then I'm going to probably take the risk of trying to make this middle section here once I get a handle on what the step is going to look like in the middle. So alright, that's it for now. ruined it. All right, here's take two. I stayed with the 1/4 inch step die. I increased the radius of this by like a 1/2 inch, and I cleaned the dies up good. I think there was some contamination on the dies and on the sheet metal that actually might have made it push harder and tear it initially. So 1 1/4 turns on this rather than 1 1/2. So I ran a couple of tests that seemed to work well. Let's see if we can make a lady out of this. Now that worked much better. Very happy with that, and I actually was able to finish well where I started, mostly because I've really paid attention to where the scribe line on my template was and where the die was, and also because I went ahead and got my flashlight to really look inside there and see what was going on. Alright, so there's the first feature for this. The second feature is the flange, and the flange up here at the cowl, and then we got to do a flange down here for the transmission tunnel to go on. This is going to make quite a mess for the of this piece, because it's really going to distort it, because it's trying to move it in a bunch of different directions, and I'll have to go to the stretcher to put it back in shape. The next thing I'm going to do right now, before I go ahead and put features on it that's going to change the thickness of it, I'm going to run a step along here where the next panel on either side is going to overlap. So let's see how I make out. Alright, so this is the first time that I used the fence, and man, I have to say that definitely sets you up to do some really nice straight features. So, alright, the time to make a mess and change it to the tipping die and put this flange on for the transmission tunnel. Alright, I made quite a potato chip out of this thing, so I've got to go in with a stretcher and start undoing the shrinkage that took place here. Alright, it's already coming a lot straighter than it was. So a little finesse with maybe the shrinker in an area that I went a little too much stretching on, and we might actually be quite flat. So, alright, last thing I need to do is put the flange on for the cowl, and I'm going to try and do that in the press brake. We'll see how that works out. Alright folks, I'm pretty happy. I was able to get the offset shape in, and there's a flange here that I'm eventually going to use for what the template is representing, the other half of the sheet metal. This flange will do a couple of things. It'll increase the stiffness here in the firewall, and if I try to do this in one piece, my equipment's just totally not capable of doing that. So I was able to use the press brake to put this flange in, and I cut it down the middle of the bend because the cowl heads this way and this way. So I've got that little point coming into the cowl. It goes around the bell housing quite nicely, and with that tipping die I was able to put the flange for the transmission tunnel to go on. So anyway, that took a while. I definitely learned a lot, as you folks saw, and once I get that tacked in place and positioned well, I'm going to put the offset kind of a complementary shape to match what's going on over there. and also I'm going to use the tipping die to put a flange on this. So that'll be a little bit of a challenge. I'll probably use a piece of scrap metal to try to put that curve in and see what happens. Shouldn't make quite as much of a mess as the trans-tunnel flange did, but that's what I need to learn, because I honestly don't know. I'm not confident enough. I don't have enough experience to predict what the sheet metal is doing. Hopefully through observation and practice I can put something together. So I got to add on to my template, because I'm going to have it go down beyond the frame quite a ways, and then I'm going to put a flange on that to receive the floor pan. So I just haven't decided if the floor pan is going to be flush with the top of the frame or it's going to travel down, and that's one of the reasons why the firewall goes down as far as it does, is that goes down to almost the bottom of the vertical section of the frame. So alright, I learned a lot today. I had fun, and I actually got my first piece of new sheet metal installed on the old number 7. Another thing you can see is the driver's daughter, Karen, actually did the lettering and the pinstriping on this car, and you can see the remnants of the pinstripe that separated the blue from the number 7 that was white, and there's some remnants of it here. Alright, I made quite a bit of a mess in that tight corner. Hopefully the shrinker will help solve that. I'll let you know how I make out. Alright folks, I didn't film much, but I had to make a stand. I converted my roll stand for my chop saw to support my shrinker, and I needed both the shrinker and the stretcher to complete that little firewall project, and I can't wait to show you the end result. I am so thrilled how that came out. So I've got to work that corner in. It's got about a 1/4 inch gap right at the very peak, but man, everywhere else it looks good. So a little bit of a project. As you saw, I was struggling a little bit with the bead roller, but I got it to fit the frame nice, fits the cowl nice, and I'm just thrilled at the way that that thing came out. So alright, now I got to fill the hole over there, but I'm not going to get as fancy because that one's going to have master cylinder, clutch rod, steering column, and a few others things going through. So that one's going to be a serviceable one. Alright, it's supper time. I'm going to call it quits. Next time on KEI Fabrication,